Welcome to season 15 of the 15-ish minute coffee chat, a conversation providing tips for every entrepreneur and business owner.
So, how do small teams, let me say that again. How small teams can build big influence and cut through the noise. So, small teams don't need big budgets, believe it or not, to be influential. They need strategy. And in this episode, Paige Velasquez Budde, CEO of Zilker Media and author of The Strategic Business Influencer, shares how to build lasting visibility and trust in a crowded market. So we're going to talk about what it really means to scale influence as a small business leader, the missteps to avoid, and where to focus when your time and resources are limited. This episode is for leaders who want real traction and not just attention. Welcome to the show.
Yay!
I think I've had way too much coffee and I literally could not read any words properly. And I was like, I'm glad Anna's reading the bio because let's just say I could cap myself and I don't. I have no boundaries when it comes to coffee. And it's like 2:00 here in Texas right now. So
Hi, Selena. I'm so excited for today's conversation. Can I tell you why? Because we met Paige in Dallas at the Veterans Edge conference, and she actually was offering mentorship times, and I had signed up for one. Yeah. And Selena, her mentorship time frame had gotten canceled, so I said, "Come be my plus one." Yeah. Most of what I talk about is us anyway, right?
I know. And I was like, "Are you sure?" And she looked at me like, "Really? Did you just say that to me?" And I was like, "Okay." And then I'm so glad, one, that Anna asked me, and two, that I actually said yes.
Yes.
To bombarding the time together, because I'll let you continue, Anna. We are super obsessed with Paige, and not in a creepy way, but like in a very professional, inspired, respectful way, you know?
That's right. Thank you for clarifying that, Selena, because, since Paige is listening in the green room right now, let's make sure she knows we're not stalkerish or weird or anything like that.
We don't want her to not come on the show before the show has even started. Right.
All right. Exactly. No, but okay. So this is what happened. We go to this mentorship and we actually had asked her a couple of questions, but one of them was about this podcast in particular. And Paige dropped like this idea. I don't even know why it had never occurred to us before, but it was like the light bulb came on and the earth view widened, and all of a sudden we were like, what are we doing? And so this season is actually the start of Paige's idea. So we're super excited to have her on because, Paige, this season is for you. I'm dedicating
the whole season, Paige, all of season 15 and forward. So look, you guys, this could be a total Paige love fest, and Paige is going to come on and be like, ladies, let's tell everybody what our call to action question we love to ask at the beginning of every show.
Yeah. So getting back to the topic at hand, today we are talking about small teams and how they can build a big influence and cut through the noise. So really, marketing with small teams is kind of where this focus is going. Yeah. So our call to action today, or our question for our listening audience today, is, what is one way you've built trust with your audience this year, online or offline? And here's why I love this question. It's not, what have you done to show up and share yourself with your audience? It's about building trust, which is a totally different thing, right?
And I think really sometimes about that one.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
You have to kind of stop and say, ooh, are those posts I've been posting, are they building trust? Or is it just something I'm doing just to remain visible in whatever capacity I possibly can?
Yeah.
That's a question.
I love it. You know what, and this is what I like, and I'm going to answer this because offline, we went to the Veterans Edge conference in Dallas. We took the mentorship appointment, you know what I mean? And we built a relationship, or we want to build a relationship with Paige. And so we invited things to happen after our time with her, right? Because we wanted to continue the relationship. So for me and for Anna, I think that's one way you can build trust with your audience, right? Is we want to say, hey, Paige, we want to continue this conversation. Everybody else that we met at Veteran Edge, but today's not about them. Today's all about Paige.
And not in a stalkerish, weird way either.
Right. We've clarified this, guys. Respectful, inspirational, all the things. So,
right. Yeah. So drop in the comments. If you are like, oh, I know one thing I've done that builds trust. Like, share your answers. Let's share your answers with each other so that we can start to really formulate what does that look like for a small.
Very true. Okay, so let's bring up the bio so Anna can read this. She's way better at reading stuff today than I am. No pressure, Anna. Let's bring up this wonderful thing, and then we're going to add this to the stage. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, so Paige is a veteran marketer, entrepreneur, and keynote speaker. She's the co-founding partner and the CEO of Zilker Media, an Austin-based agency that builds trusted leaders and companies. Now, during her tenure as CEO, the Austin Business Journal has named Zilker one of the city's fastest growing companies, as well as one of the best places to work 2 years in a row. That says a lot about the CEO. It has also been listed on Austin's Inno list of coolest companies. That says even more about the CEO. So Paige speaks to leaders about strategic business influence, conferences, and also corporate events, including organizations such as Ernst & Young, JP Morgan & Chase, Harvard Medical School. Okay, this is not a slacker, right, that we're bringing on board here. And she's just amazing. And she has this approach to people-driven marketing that has been featured in a ton of media outlets. And so we're really, really excited to have her on here today. And she doesn't say this in here, but she also has a book coming out. We're going to just share that today.
I'm going to share that in a little bit. So, Anna, what a bio. And I think everybody can read the rest of her amazingness.
It's always in our show notes. Yeah. So you can always come to our show notes and find all the information about Paige there.
Yeah. So, okay. So we're going to bring Paige up.
Hi. I'm so excited to be here with you both. And oh my goodness, y'all. And I'm going to say y'all because we're all in Texas.
Right.
I need to take you ladies with me everywhere. I need that kind of hype.
Yes. Hey, look.
That was so
amazing. Can you imagine if me and Anna would have been there before every mentorship you had at Veterans Edge? And now your time with Paige. Like, I mean, people would be so ready. Like, they're like, I'm with the right person. So
it's easy to be excited about someone that really, I mean, Paige, just in the 25 minutes we spent with you, Selena and I had so many takeaways and just light bulb moments. So it's easy to be excited about somebody who delivers incredible value, in just a conversation.
Yeah.
So that's all you.
Thank you. And it was so wonderful. I think it was very serendipitous that we all met in Dallas. And I learned so much from you all too, and have so much respect for the work that you do and the beauty that you create for others. And I just loved having a conversation and really excited about today's conversation as well.
Awesome. Okay. Before we get started, because I know me and Anna might be really excited and start asking questions, but let's take our imaginary selfie with you because you're fabulous. And on 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right. I was worried that we were going too far and you might be like, you know what? Maybe this podcast episode recording is not for me. I'm going to just let these ladies do
you started it, Selena, not in a weird stalkerish way.
No.
I'm like, oh no, are we too much?
Yeah, I'm gonna clip that and just play that, for my husband, my kids, my my team.
Just to remind you all who I am, you guys, just so you know. All right, let's put you in the power seat, Paige, and let's kind of dive into all the questions that we have for you.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about our first question that we're going to pull up today is about strategic business influence, which is a word that you used in your intake form. And we wanted to kind of bring it to our audience today. So you talk about strategic business influence. What does that look like for small teams?
Sure. And I think it's helpful to first start with what is a strategic business influencer? Like you said, I used it a lot in our conversation and in the intake forms. And really that is a business leader. So it can be a CEO, a founder of a company, a high-level executive whose job it is to develop more high touch, personalized connections and relationships, who's probably doing that a lot behind the scenes, but needs to scale that visibility to accelerate trust, to drive significant revenue, profit, and results for their business. And so when you think about that on a small team, a lot of small teams, a lot of small businesses are coming up against much larger competitors. And just naturally, those larger competitors have really hefty marketing budgets. So it's hard to compete from a marketing standpoint when your competitor is spending millions of dollars sometimes in certain industries more than you can. And you have to default to what is the most unique differentiator that cannot be replicated. And at the end of the day, that is going to be you and your people. And so for some leaders, most entrepreneurs, founders, leaders that I know, they have that servant leadership heart. And what's confused about, today's environment is they feel like that servant leadership needs to be behind the scenes. But in reality, for the modern leader, it's the job to be just right alongside the company. So a very clear distinction of not behind, not in front of, but right alongside the company. When you have the visible leadership with those, servant leadership abilities, like building relationships, building culture, being the thought leader, the expert of the business, when you bring a little bit more visibility to that, it brings that competitive edge that cannot be replicated by your competition. And so that's how you learn to scale and grow and outsmart your competition, is by tapping into you and your people. And you as a leader have to lead the charge in that. But of course, as you start to grow your team, especially your leadership team, empower them to do the same. Just because at the end of the day, nobody can replicate that thought leadership and, relationship building, and leaving your relationship building to behind the scenes just leaves it to, one-on-one, hand-on-hand combat pretty much. But when you're able to start doing it at scale, you'll see your lead generation grows, your revenue grows, your profits grow.
Okay, so two things that you said that just really struck me. The first one is, in marketing, we talk about having a USP, a unique selling proposition for what we're doing. Like, what is it that's super special about what you do that nobody else is doing? And that's kind of your thing you have to hone in on. And I have never heard somebody say, my people, honestly. And that's basically what you just said today, is like, in addition to maybe other things that you offer, the team you've put together and what that looks like and how that brings an experience to your business structure is one of your unique selling propositions that's going to create that level of trust that you just brought in and then grow your business. I love that.
That's absolutely right. And when you think about, going up against competitors, if you're going to logo with somebody outspending you, it's going to be really hard to win that battle and that competition. And what we're finding too, just from a consumer standpoint and an audience standpoint, two data points. One, since 2020, this number has increased, but we're finding that trust in institutions is at an all-time low. And that percentage has increased every year since 2020, and really hit a peak in 2024. But what Edelman found in their trust study at the end of 2024 was that people were now seeing their peers. They were now seeing them with the same perception of authority as traditional authoritative figures like doctors, politicians, lawyers. They were seeing, my peer, Selena, or my peer Anna, if she was out speaking about this as an expert, I would trust you the same. I would trust just a traditional authority figure. So it's just been a huge shift in the environment than what a lot of us were brought up in terms of our career.
That makes me want to. I'm okay. I'm gonna let Selena talk, but
no,
I got so many questions.
I was gonna say, right? You do see a lot. People want more of the story behind the business, the learning of the person that built this from blood, sweat, and tears, right? And they're more invested in that, like you said, than kind of the logo of this big marketing budget that they have to kind of show up you, right? And sometimes they're
That's
just not
right.
interested in that. So that's
And
what
the same thing when it comes to talent acquisition too, which is very important as a leader growing a business. Your talent, your team members care about who they're working for and why. And we're seeing a lot of that, especially at companies who are wanting to scale, especially at the executive level. We have had clients that have said, I was able to bring on this executive because they listened to a podcast of me sharing the vision of our company, why we do what we do, my story as an entrepreneur, and said yes to the conversation. So there's so much opportunity in being more visible, in the ability to share your why as a leader that you're probably doing anyways behind closed doors with your team, that not only just is directly tied to revenue generation, but also talent acquisition, which is, the number one important thing for a successful company.
I think your t-shirt that we're going to make is going to say yes to the conversation. Like, do you know what I mean? Like that's so important for just so many reasons, because when we don't say yes to that, there's just so many missed opportunities that I feel people experience. And I love that. I love that. Go ahead, Anna.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, like the statistic that you shared with us about the being trusted as much as a traditional authority figure in that sense. Why are we seeing that happen now? What's been the shift in the way the market is moving, the way companies are growing themselves, that you would pinpoint? I mean, this might be a psychology question almost, but what would you say would be the shift that's causing this right now, or creating this opportunity even?
Yes, a lot of it is just the nature of how we interact online. So just to give you a really tangible example, what is said about you as a leader on page 1 of Google formulates your first impression. So first impressions are no longer created over an email, over a phone call, over a first in-person meeting. It's now what Google says about you on page 1. And if we think about how we interact day to day, when you signed up for that mentoring slot with me, you probably did some research on who you were meeting with and why you would sign up to talk with me. And what comes up on page 1 is so extremely important, because that's just how we interact as a society. It's getting even faster now with ChatGPT, AI, where we could even just input and have a conversation about who we're meeting with as well. Why should I? If you think about an investor, they're 100% looking you up online, and you walking in that door, you're starting from whatever point they formed that first impression of you around. So it's really important to have that intentionality there. Now, the second half of your question is a little bit more on also how we're consuming media and content. And now we have seen increasingly over the years, an audience, consumer, people turn their attention away from generic mass media, really for 2 reasons. One, we're starting to project bias on what we're consuming as a society, and we're not believing everything the media says. But number 2, more importantly, is we're realizing we have invested at least an hour to watch a news segment, radio segment, traditional format of media, and we're only getting a fraction of the value that we're seeking out. So for example, every morning in my commute, I used to live about 30 to 40 minutes away from our office with Austin traffic, as y'all probably are familiar with. But during that time, I would listen to my favorite country music radio show, and that was the Bobby Bones Show. And what I loved about his show and what was so unique is he wasn't just bringing on the big country star celebrities. He was also bringing in the people behind the scenes in the music industries. He was bringing on the writers. He was bringing on the managers to be interviewed. But I was realizing I was listening to 30 to 40 minutes and only getting a 3 to 5 minute segment of the interview, because that's all, airtime allowed for. So what I found myself doing over time is turning off that radio show and then actually tuning up the Bobby Cast, which is Bobby Bones's podcast. And he spends 45 minutes to an hour just in those interviews with celebrities, country music stars, songwriters, managers, publishers. And that just fascinates me. And I started to do the same thing when it comes to leadership content. I do the same thing now when it comes to marketing content. And so we've realized, just with the way technology has evolved, the way online social media platforms, podcasting has evolved, we have the ability now to go directly to our interests, and we can cut through the clutter, and we have a lot more of, a consumer selection process.
That's so darn interesting.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, I love it for multiple reasons. One, I just love the acknowledgement of like, there's more than just that celebrity artist, singer, right? That there's people behind the scenes making all the magic happen. And I love that there's just that the piquing of the interest and saying, hey, there's more to this than that. And that's what, like you said, what consumers are wanting. I mean, I recently started listening to this thing watching, whatever, I'm old, on TikTok, but just like they play these old commercials from the 80s, and I can remember them. And I'm aghast at some of them, of course, thinking, oh my gosh, and how so different it is now, like you said, and how we definitely don't trust. And I thought, my gosh, I can't believe we believed this stuff, back then. And just like it is interesting to watch the evolution of marketing and how people are given stuff, and then now how they're taking it. You know what I mean? Because that was a fantastic answer to that question.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things that you said, though, was like that value proposition that people are giving, right? So you can talk for 45 minutes, but if you're only getting 3 minutes of value out of what they're saying, they're going to stop tuning into what you're doing.
Yes.
You have to follow through.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's exactly right. And a lot of leaders are, afraid to take this step into just that, scalable visibility, because they're concerned about coming off as overly promotional, or I don't want to be a personality, or I don't want my face to be, the company. And really, you shouldn't. If you're doing this right, you should be none of those things. And that's something, just a mindset shift as a leader. Your job isn't to self-promote. It isn't to be a personality, something that you're not, because people see through that. Just like you said, Anna, people see through that, and you're not delivering value. So the way that we coach leaders is by saying, what are you already doing behind the scenes? In your sales process, in your client consulting, whatever it might be, in the services that you're providing. You are the expert. That's why somebody's going to buy. That's why somebody's going to invest. That's why somebody wants to work with you. Let's just bring a little bit more strategic scalability to those things that you are already doing.
I feel like we just flowed kind of naturally into the second question that we had for you, which was talking about small teams prioritizing visibility efforts without stretching too thin, right? So that's what you're saying right now is like focus in on what's already happening, as opposed to trying to create these massive campaigns or to-do lists of things to, this video to make and that post to put out and these graphics to create and this banner to develop, or whatever that might look like. And still getting the same bang for the buck when it's like, hey, what if we just focused on what CEO, Mr. Cool over here, or Mrs. Cool over here, what they're already doing.
Yes.
And talk about that, because that's what our clients and customers want to know.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And my favorite thing to do is what I call upcycle. So just utilizing, and this is maybe a good strategy workshop to do with your team, but really look at what are you doing as the leader for your company behind the scenes. And then where are there opportunities to scale that, to make it more visible, exactly like you were saying. And that's another kind of roadblock a lot of times that we see with especially teams that are scaling, that are smaller. There's already a lot. You're probably wearing multiple hats a day. But for example, if you are spending time, writing a blog post or doing a recording like this upcycle that into several different forms of content to last you a month or beyond, right? And so just kind of thinking that way, but also like if your job as the leader of the company, your main focus is business development, utilize content as a reason to reach out and build relationships for your company. That's one of my favorite excuses to utilize content. So maybe it's just monitoring a list of people that you can be commenting on their LinkedIn, liking their posts, kind of staying on their radar. For others, if you're looking to build relationships, it might be starting an interview series. So it doesn't have to be, full-blown production like this, which is amazing if you can do it, because what an experience. But if it's even just a written interview series or a phone call, it's a different way to get in front of your target audience that stands out, especially if you're building a business with high touch relationships. Maybe it's even just saying, hey, I need better vendor partners for my CPG business. I need better advisors. You reaching out and asking for lunch, asking for coffee, asking for happy hour. There are hundreds of other people doing the same thing. So the best way to stand out is by differentiating that ask and making it seem just as much a value add to them as it is to you. So finding that win-win opportunity. And then from this, say for example, we record, 15 minutes or so, I can get a solid, several clips, which is going to go over 15 because I am long-winded here, but sorry, I didn't pay attention to the name of the podcast, obviously.
There's an ish in there for a reason.
Yeah, don't worry. There's a ish. We make it small, but it really is more ish and way less 15.
I need a very big ish here. Yeah. But, we're going to get, I would say 4 to 5 clips out of this that can be used over time. You can pull a transcript from this, and then you have, 3 blog posts, 18, short form posts, whatever that might be. So just maximize. And a lot of leaders too don't realize they're also the ones that are staying at the forefront of industry trends, industry news. So I like to sit down with a lot of leaders and ask them, hey, you probably read the headlines of what's impacting your business today. Okay, you have thoughts about those. You're probably prepping your team on those. Let's get some of those down, whether you're voice recording, putting them into AI to transcribe, and then asking it to put out multiple posts. But one of the best ways to get even just maximum visibility on a LinkedIn or on a newsletter is talking about timely events. That is how you start to establish that industry thought leadership and expertise, is look at what is your target client, target audience analyzing, what's impacting them today, and how can you as a leader in your industry walk them through that, walk them through how to think about it, walk them through how you are analyzing it right now. And that's one way to get a newsletter open. That's one way to get a lot of visibility on a LinkedIn platform.
What I love about what you just said is you just laid out about 7 different ways that an organization can do something. A small team organization can do something that wouldn't be overwhelming, but also fits a lot of different personality types of leadership, right? Not everybody wants to be on a podcast. Not everybody wants to be, doing a video of some kind, talking about their thoughts on something, but there's so many different ways that you can share information now. Wow. I love that you opened it up and basically said, it's not like this is what's going to work. And then it's step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And it kind of just a caveat off what you're saying, Anna, right? It's not everything fits the same way. So every business owner, every business leader is different. And I think what I appreciate, and Anna said this earlier, but is that I think I always just assume people know you can repurpose and upcycle so many of your things. And even pulling from, in the previous past, like there's a couple comments you can, anyway. But what I mean is, like, some people don't realize, like, oh, I can continue to upcycle. I can continue, you know what I mean? So it's funny, you think you don't have to say that, but I'm so glad that you just kind of put that like reminder out there of, hey, one piece can turn into many, many things for quite a long time if you do it in a strategic way.
Absolutely. And don't be worried either. Just we have, I've spoken with some leaders who go, "Oh, well, I've already posted that on LinkedIn," which is where we primarily work in terms of social media. That's where we see the most movement for, most of the businesses we work with. A lot of times what I like to remind them is there's an algorithm, and the algorithm, the odds of you coming across twice on somebody's feed is so low just because there's so much out there. So don't be afraid to repurpose, just do it in a strategic new way. So maybe you used this, from this transcript, you use this paragraph. Next time, use another paragraph, but don't be afraid to put it out there more than once, because the likelihood of it being picked up in feeling noisy is very, very low.
Yeah.
No, I can tell you right now, I sometimes never see Anna's posts on LinkedIn and she's my bestie and she posts every day and I'm on there every day. You know what I mean? But like you said, there's so many people out there. So thanks for mentioning that. I love that.
Yeah. I think something just like something that Selena and I do that I think is also maybe worth noting is when we do a podcast like this and we do create those mini clips for people, we give our guests full access to them. We don't maintain this close hold ownership of them, because in our minds, if they're sharing it, our audiences are different. And again, these algorithms that we're working against, right? How likely is it that they're going to see the exact same clip coming from us, coming from them, versus that crossover, where that crossover happens? And I think sometimes just reminding yourselves about that collaboration you can have with these people you're building trust with and trying to bring into either as a client or, and then it becomes that value add of what you're doing being something that now they can take from. And wow, you just saved me 17 posts that I have to do by giving me the content to do it. Right.
Absolutely. So, that is amazing that you all do that, because that's a huge value add to the guest and their companies.
Yeah. We wanted to when Anna and I talked about first doing this, we were like, why are we not making it easy for them to share about us and what we create together? Why are we not saying, here, if you want it, it's yours? I mean, we do all things, people look, it's not just about this interview, but we also want our guests to come on and feel loved and appreciated for the time that they're kind of dedicating to us. And so there's even an after thing that we do with our guests, and we make sure, hey, we're giving you all the things. We're going to give you swipe copies so that you don't have to think about anything when you want to promote your, we make it easy. And me and Anna have been guests on other people's shows, and you sometimes don't get much. And so you're not sure what you should do to help, to promote yourself or to, to get out there. So it was important for us to kind of create that experience for our guests, so where they're like, I'm going to do this. So yeah, I love that. Okay, Anna, what's next?
Well, okay. So, our last question was really kind of about, let me pull this up really quick. What visibility tactics work better for local businesses and what work better for digital first brands? We've kind of focused a little bit on the digital first brands today. So if you're a brick and mortar company, you're still probably advertising online as well. So it's not like you're only doing local stuff, but there is a distinction, I think. I mean, let's think about local cable versus national streaming channels, and the kinds of commercials you're going to see in those two areas. So if you could just speak for a minute about this, because I think a lot of small businesses aren't sure where their money is going to work best for them.
Absolutely. That's a really good question. And, first and foremost, every company is a digital company at this point. So, even if it's a brick and mortar, HVAC company, flooring manufacturers, whoever it might be, plumber, ChatGPT, do you know how many people are searching that now to get that information? Searching Google, which now has an AI summary at the top. So again, I can't harp enough that the first impression of the company and the leader is so incredibly important. I have so many leaders that come to me of, I've done business this way the past 50 years. Great, but everybody's about to beat you moving forward. Or leaders will tell me, oh, I don't have to worry about my online presence. I'm not a part of that. Well, Google is actually starting to validate companies, not only by keyword optimization and backlinks, they're also looking at, is this company true, credible, a real company? And it's actually helpful if the leader's name is found in other places online, just from a technical SEO standpoint. So just a quick spiel on that side of things. The other side of this is really important. So for local companies, what's extremely important is a targeted, what we call micro media strategy. So when you think of traditional marketing and PR, a lot of people think of Good Morning America. They think of Forbes. They think of the traditional TV, radio, whatever it might be. But when you have a local business, the more targeted you are, the more focused on micro media you are, and this goes the same for very industry specific businesses or niche businesses, the more results you're going to drive. So if you're out spending your money on Facebook ads all the time that aren't targeted, or you're out there spending your money trying to get the really big, pie in the sky goals, you're missing out on a lot of opportunity, like, local business journals, being featured in there. We have here in Texas and in some other states, this incredible news outlet called Community Impact, which I don't know if y'all are familiar with in your area. I believe it reaches close to y'all at least, but Community Impact, it's just incredibly targeted micromedia. It's community specific. So for Austin, for example, there's a South Austin, there's a Dripping Springs where I live, there's a North Austin, there's an East Austin. And it's just such a beautiful targeted strategy. They have like the highest readership and outperform the traditional papers because they're so targeted. And so think of your strategy like that, getting in front of those audiences and spending your money and time and resources there. Finding ways to be involved with, if we work with a lot of community banks, just looking at how can we input ourselves just in opportunities with the little league teams. How can we support, the high school team going here and there? How can we go in and speak to, business clubs, whatever that might be. The more targeted you are with your outreach, and maybe you're even building a newsletter list. One of my favorite things to think about is being a strategic business influencer and being successful is not about the amount of followers you have. I would rather you have the right 500 followers than the right millions of followers.
Okay. I just want to applaud right now that you just said that, because I think that is such a mindset people have. Oh, I don't have enough followers, I'm not making a big enough impact. And it is not about that. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah. I've had so many clients that have focused on that vanity metric, not realizing like really the real impact, right? Like you said, like have a very quality 500 versus a vanity 1 million,
And I'll give you a good example just of a targeted local business. So we work with, like I said, a lot of community regional banks. One of the banks that we worked with, their goal was to be the bank for entrepreneurs here in the Austin area. And so what they did that was so unique that I just love is you walk in their downtown branch, Austin, downtown branch, and you look around, and of course you have, the tellers and all the things you would typically see at a bank. And then you turn to your right as you walk in, and there's this beautiful glass room, and it's a podcasting studio. And people are like, wait, where are we? This is a bank. Why is there a podcasting studio here? But what they were doing is they were bringing in local entrepreneurs to tell their story. And their podcast, you would think, oh, a bank starting a podcast, it's going to be about how I can get the best rates. How do I get a loan? How do I, no, nothing about banking. It was all about the entrepreneurs and the impact that they were making in the community. What's important in our community that we need to know? What is your story? How have you contributed to the community? What do you want to share with the community? And what that allowed them to do was bring their prospects in, give them a whole tour of the bank. They got to meet with the president. They got to meet with their bankers, each division head. And then they sat down with the CEO and chairman for 45 minutes to an hour. And as you all know, as business owners, having a relationship with your banker and the decision maker who's going to say yes or no to, a line of credit, a loan, whatever that might be, is huge. And so, they stood out in that way. And it was such a beautifully targeted, focused, strategy. And yes, it grows organically in terms of the listenership over time. But really, it wasn't about the listenership of the podcast at all. At the end of the day, it was about who were they bringing on? Were they getting in front of the right people? Were they having the right conversations? And those entrepreneurs and leaders, once those podcast episodes went live, they were out sharing with their networks and talking on and on about the bank and the brand and the president and the CEO and what they were doing. And so that just shows, you don't have to have a big budget to be able to do that. Maybe you don't have a physical space that you can build out a podcast studio, but doing things like this and being targeted about those relationships, the followers at the end of the day aren't going to translate to business results if they're not the right ones.
Oh, that is brilliant. I love that. And it's, I always talk about like the experience, right? Like the experience with someone or whatever. And I love that that's the experience that an entrepreneur gets with a bank. I don't know why you totally made me go to like the Mary Poppins scene where they're all in the bank, with the bankers and they're,
yes.
But it's like, that's what I thought of, but I'm like, oh, you don't see that nowadays. That is not something that you get to have, it's very, hey, everything's online and hopefully you'll say yes when I click and send my application. And it's definitely another level. I do love that. That's fantastic. And when we're offline, I need to know the name of this bank.
Yes, I will.
I'm curious. And this again, it's a story you're telling. So what they're doing is working, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and it just goes back to the very first thing we started talking about, which is that strategic business influence, right? And if you're going to be a strategic business influencer, this bank has figured out a way to do that by getting other people to share who they are and what they're doing. Yes. Because what they're doing is so cool, unique, and has built this relationship of trust with others who find out about it in a way that's like, oh, this is cool. This is unique. This is different. And it's a positive thing. It's not anyway. Yes. I love this. I love it. Kind of went full circle, our conversation.
And yes. And it's highest and best use of that CEO and chairman's time.
Yes.
He has to be at the forefront of relationship building, but he's doing it in a way that allows the bank to leverage this as content and other people to share it as well. And he does great of also interviewing team members. So it mixes it up a little bit, but absolutely like highest and best use of his time, but maximizing it and leveraging it and upcycling it. So there's just so much that they get out of each, 30 to 45 minute conversation.
Yeah. So again, what Paige just shared is when you think about how smart that little action that they chose for themselves for content has created her to share this conversation here today with us. But after this, I'm going to talk about it.
Yep.
And if this is in our local area. So if there's somebody I know, I'll be like, you know what? Apparently there's a local bank. You know what I mean? And that's how this works. And that's such a great kind of like story to share of thinking that way, like change that mindset. Because I don't mean to say like this grossy sales, right? The conversion possibilities is greater when you
absolutely
you really look like that. So are we at that point where we have to like share toolkits? And
yes, we have to share toolkits. We have to wind down. I mean, our 15-ish minutes are very ishy right now.
Yeah, we're going into possibly having wine with Paige. You never know. So I'm going to pull the things up. I'm going to push some buttons, guys. So bear with us. You don't know what you're going to see. Oh, look. I mean, it's going to work. It's going to work. Yeah. There we go. There we go. So, you guys, Anna touched on this in the very beginning, but this book is in pre-order status as of this recording, and we think it should be part of the toolkit. So we're going to have Paige share a little bit about what this is, and don't worry, for those of you listening to the podcast, links and all the stuff will be in the description, so you can click over to our website, check it out, links to this. So Paige, take it away. Tell everybody what this is.
Yes. So I'm so excited to share this because it just recently went up for pre-order. It'll be live in bookstores. The published date is November 25th, 2025, which is my birthday. So it'll be such a fun birthday celebration. But it's a lot of what we talked about today. So how can leaders, take this strategy mindset and actually apply it? And I share my favorite part of this book is I was able to tell a lot of business leaders and entrepreneur stories. So I shared some, well-known stories. Sarah Blakely of Spanx I've talked about in this book. I talk about Whitney Wolfe Herd of Bumble. There's quite a few in there, but I also share, more importantly, the entrepreneurs that you probably haven't heard of at a large scale that have grown just tremendously successful, jaw-dropping, very large businesses, but used this strategy to do so. And they were up against massive competition, big budgets and spending, and they just used a lot of these strategies. So it's fun because it's not just a mindset, but it's also, here's just practically how you do it. And here are examples of those that have done it in several different industries. So it was a lot of fun writing this, but more importantly, telling all of their stories as well.
And when we pre-order and then we get our books, it's a great excuse to come to Austin and get them signed by the author, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope. And I also want to share with you all too, very, very soon in the coming, month or so. I don't know when this exactly is going live, but I will have some additional resources on my website, which is paigevelasquezbudde.com, and it will be a workbook. So it'll be a companion to this to actually give you an exercise. It's a pretty dense workbook, so I'm excited to give that away. And then we also have an assessment that you can take to really evaluate your first impression as a leader.
Hey, whatever kind of like focus group team you might need, Paige, I'm in. I will do all the things. I love this. And I know from Anna and I, we want to say a huge congratulations because we know that writing a book is such a big feat and it's a big deal. And so kudos to you. And before you know it, November is going to be here and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Right. So
yes.
We said to Paige in Dallas, we're like, we're going to have you on twice. Once when the book, before we'll talk about the launch and then again when it launches. So don't worry, Paige is coming back. Yeah, I just know this.
Hopefully at wine time, right?
Yeah, maybe we'll have to do a really like in live. You know what? We need to go to that podcast studio in that bank and we'll record our next episode together.
I feel like we should do like a little series and it'll be a book club where we work through her workbook and her book at the same time.
Yeah.
And we just get all of our business friends to all of our entrepreneurial business friends to just do it.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, I do too. Okay, so again, we will be sure to put this in our description, so don't fret or worry. Paige, tell everybody where they can find you, and all the things where you like to connect with people.
Yes. So it's under Paige Velasquez Budde pretty much everywhere, but the primary place I focus is LinkedIn. So there's my LinkedIn URL. And then of course, our firm is Zilker Media. So zilkermedia.com is where you can find out more about our team, what we do, and the wonderful clients that we get to serve.
Yay. And then we'll be sure to have that other website that she just talked about in all the places for Anna and Selena. So I'm gonna this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna switch us over to this. And Paige, just so you know, I have to put on Oscar type music because I chat too much. And Anna does the gracious thank you and all the stuff. So, but my face may be very animated, so you'll know how I feel,
Thank you, Selena. Okay, so Paige, we want to just say thank you so much for coming on and sharing all your wisdom and so much about strategic business influencer, like just the concept and the idea for the business owners that listen into our podcast. We're so grateful for you being here today. For all of our listeners out there, thank you for joining us for today's 15-ish minute coffee chat. As always, you can find us at AnnaandSelena.com. We love hanging out on LinkedIn. So if you're there, come and connect with us there. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and follow on your favorite podcast platform. And we will see you at the next 15-ish minute coffee chat. Thank you.
Aloha.